All right, NFL Week 10, early bets, early leans, early things to consider here. I already did guess the spread over on my TikTok, but it's time to start putting the money on the table here. And though I try not to do so, I try not to bet Thursday Night Football, try and make it a rule of mine. It's usually a game you don't want to watch anyways, kind of can be a crapshoot, but I'm going to make an exception here with Cincinnati plus 6.5, Cincinnati plus 6. I like them both. I mean, if you just look where we saw these two teams played earlier in the year, goes to overtime, decided by a field goal. Cincinnati, was getting 2.5 points at home. If you just flip the home fields here, what they were on a neutral, all that sort of stuff, home field's not 3, but it does get to about Baltimore minus 5.5, 6. My thing is, styles make fights, right? And we've seen that this Baltimore secondary can be vulnerable, but it takes the right team to be able to exploit that. We saw that Cincinnati was able to do that in that game. So I think here with Cincinnati in that situation, and a team too that has played themselves, right back into the thick of things in the wild card race in the AFC. You got, Indianapolis and Denver ahead of them for that 7th spot. Denver's going to be a dog to Kansas City in Week 10. Indianapolis is going to be a dog to Buffalo. So Cincinnati here sees a divisional opponent going there, nothing new for them. I think Cincinnati here is worth a shot. Again, styles make fights. Feel like getting 6 we know that Joe Burrow has proven what he can do to this secondary. Just got to hang on for dear life on defense. I think the defense has gotten a little bit better. Cincinnati's has since that game, just a little bit. So yeah, let's go Cincinnati here plus 6. We get something to watch on Thursday Night Football as well. Another one that I had written down here is I'm going to take New Orleans plus the points against Atlanta here. Look at Atlanta's a nightmare, or excuse me, New Orleans is a nightmare. They fired Dennis Allen as I was recording Guess the Spread. And my numbers made this only Atlanta as like a 1.5 favorite, or at least in Guess the Spread. And then, I'm seeing Atlanta laying 3.5 here at New Orleans. And even though, I'm not betting this just based off the new coach bounce. And the new coach bounce, by the way, since 2003, coaches that were fired teams that get a new coach mid-season after firing them. The next week they were 17-22 straight up, but 22-17 against the spread. The Jets did that earlier this season with Saleh. They lost straight up and didn't cover the numbers. So that is kind of pinballed back to, everyone knows that, of the new coach bounce, which usually means Vegas catches up to that as well. But to me, New Orleans, they're obviously better with Carr, and, you have to do your best to take the Carolina loss out of it in division here. Over a field goal, New Orleans is getting here 3.5. I think New Orleans is worth a bet here. It's just, I don't get from these two teams played earlier in the season. Atlanta was a 2.5 point favorite at home, which means on a neutral, they were about 1.5 points better. Okay. So now we go to New Orleans, flip the home field. It should be, Atlanta -1-ish. And I know we've downgraded New Orleans. And even if you've upgraded Atlanta, I still don't get through 3 here. So New Orleans plus 3.5 is a bet for me. I like it for a little bit at 3 as well. And look, earlier in the week here, I'm not taking giant chunks out of this. I'm just, putting some stake down, some money down. You don't even have to put money down. Just circle it and see where this line goes as the week progresses and what your assumptions are. It's not an end all be all. Say, yeah, you can even, there's opportunities where you can middle by taking an early bet because the line moves the other way. You can buy out of it. So, yeah, those are 2 ones right there off the bat. I'm going to add one more for you, which was kind of interesting because I got it really, really wrong during Guess the Spread, is Detroit at Houston. So I called Detroit like 7 better on a neutral, which once I closed my phone and I started to dive into it, because I go completely fresh for Guess the Spread on Monday, the difference is not 7 between these two teams. I keep a power rating. It's not 7. I think I overreacted to Detroit's win at Green Bay, which really came down to just Love's interception at the end of the half, bonehead play. And Houston's lost to the Jets. There's an opportunity. There's Nico Collins has the chance to come off IR this week. This is the first week he's eligible. So if Collins is back for Houston, we know what that does for them. And this Detroit team, right? I'm trying to fade them, which could be, a fool's errand. But if you just look at Detroit, last 2 weeks, this is from Evan Abrams over at Action Network, does fantastic work. Detroit Lions have won and covered last 2 weeks. And against Tennessee, Detroit had 225 total yards to Tennessee's 416. And then this past week against Green Bay, Detroit had 261 total yards, Green Bay 411. And it's the first team to cover in back-to-back weeks as favorites with just 261 or less yards in both games. On top of that, the Lions, like I said, could be a fool's errand. Last 55 games, the Lions are 40-15 against the spread, 72%. That's outstanding. So, you could be saying, look, they're just not adjusting enough for the Lions yet. And maybe that number I spit out at first was, Detroit 7 better on neutral is right. But I think there's a chance for Detroit I think there's a chance for Detroit here to get got. Houston, I want them off the bounce back after the extended week against the Jets. I think that bodes well for them. So I did take some Houston +4. I'm interested. I would take +3.5 as well if you want. But this is a line. Once it's settled at 3.5, I don't think it's something you have to jump at. So if you have a 4 for Houston, I would like it. But other than that, you can see how this settles in. I think since it being a Sunday night football team too, it's fun Sunday night football game too, what you tend to see is after a NFL Sunday, as we, get ready for that night game, you see favorites, those numbers get longer because a lot of people press after being down early in the day, say, okay, Detroit will lay it, and that number can balloon to like 4.5, for instance, from where it is now. So I don't know if you have to go run and grab it at this point, now that it's settled in at 3.5 is what I'm looking at across the board here. Yeah, so I am interested in Houston, though, I'll tell you that. And just a couple more things as we look here. Favorites, last 2 weeks in the NFL, or last 5 weeks rather in the NFL, 46, 26, and 1 against the spread. It's just favorites are going 64%. It's become quite the strategy to lay it with these favorites. As I just want to double check that while I'm here. Favorites, last 5 weeks. That's the number. In this past week alone, week 9, favorites went 13-1 straight up, 10-4 against the spread. The one lone loss outright would be New Orleans losing to Carolina. So I tend to think we're going to see a bounce back for the Dogs here myself. But, who the hell knows? Another one I'll circle here. Pittsburgh +2.5 at Washington. If Pittsburgh was +3, man, I would love Pittsburgh +3, but I don't think we're going to get that. Another one here is Arizona is hosting the New York Jets. The Jets and the Cardinals have actually been two teams that are really difficult for a lot of people I follow and respect to power rate, because Arizona's played probably the toughest schedule to date, depending on what metric would you go off of, at least one of the hardest for sure. And, they have a winning record. This is an Arizona team that's 4-5. They're getting the spread's 1 against Chicago this past week. Take care of business against Chicago. It's 1 again with the Jets. Jets, another team nearly impossible to power rate. Everyone believes they should be better. Yeah, they probably should be better. And the power rating for their roster is, continues to not be on par or parallel to how they've played, right? I joke every week, what's the excuse for the Jets going to be this week? And it just, they might just have that bug. So be careful there with your assumption of those two teams. Again, Arizona, really difficult schedule, and the Jets continue to jet, even though they were able to pull it out on Thursday night football. I'm interested to see what happens with Indianapolis this week. They bench Richardson. I was banging my fist saying Flacco's an upgrade. I still think he is, but he missed some throws or missed some open receivers in that Minnesota game that could have some guys in the locker room going, all right, what the hell are we doing here? So that's something to monitor there. The temperature in Indianapolis. Dak Prescott, is he going to play? What's the update on Dak Prescott? that's something to monitor because, Philadelphia, if for sure no Dak, I have them laying a bigger number, but I'm kind of just terrified of the Eagles as a whole. I don't know what really to make of them with Sirianni. So yeah, I would check. There's a lot of great people on Twitter you can check. They kind of aggregate people's power ratings. I'll drop a screenshot of some of the best accounts to follow. They aggregate some of these power ratings so you can see what your assumption of these teams are compared to what other people's are. I recommend keeping a power rating, but that's just a couple places I stand here as we head into week 10. I didn't have a good week last week, I'll be honest, but this is the thing about me. I'm back in front of the camera. I've done Guess the Spread this week. I'm doing early bets. This is the life we chose, okay? This is the life we chose. So good luck on all your week 10. Appreciate you if you made it this far and watched it. Enjoy. Let's go Bengals.